powered by breathing. It's our life force, central to our health. The way we breathe affects all parts of the body, influencing how we speak, feel, and move. Reciprocally, the way we move, feel, and speak alters how we breathe. Whilst everyone breathes, not everyone breathes well. Fatigue, anxiety, headaches, frequent breathlessness, and chest pain are common symptoms of suboptimal breathing patterns, which can occur as a result of poor posture or over-breathing. In today's world, where our lung health is increasingly threatened by everyday stresses, as well as pollution and infectious respiratory diseases, it's more important now than ever to notice the breath and acknowledge that how we breathe matters. Breathing is movement. The act of inhaling and exhaling encourages simultaneous movement of our bones, organs, muscles, and connective tissues. It's an activity of our whole torso. Our lungs house an exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide, which move between our lungs and our bloodstream. Surprisingly, most of our lung tissue is in our back. As we inhale, we feel an expansion. As we exhale, we feel a release. The lungs extend up behind the collarbone and down to touch the diaphragm, the main muscle of respiration. It is supple and dome-shaped and connects to the spine and lower ribs. As we inhale, the diaphragm moves downwards and outwards. As we exhale, the diaphragm moves upwards and inwards. This action stimulates movement of our ribs, spine, sternum, shoulder girdle, and of all the abdominal organs. Movement and breathing are intertwined. The more mobility and space we can create in our bodies, the freer our breathing. Opening, unbinding, extending. Some ways of moving can even enhance optimal breathing. But what is optimal breathing, and how might we embody it? Think dance, not just in its traditional sense, but as a guide for breathing optimally. Breathing steadily and lightly with the diaphragm is essential for breathing optimally, and for relaxing both the body and mind. Adjusting the body to find good postural alignment, whether in stillness or movement, frees up the respiratory muscles, enabling better breathing. We are anatomically designed to breathe through our nose. Doing so slows down the breath, increasing oxygenation and improving blood circulation. Being conscious and regularly observing how we are breathing can help us to notice and resolve any interferences. The more ease we can find in the body, the calmer our breathing. When breathing optimally, it is soundless, undetectable. Dance and breathe well.
In more detail, and this was very much because it's so integrated into my practice, you know, as dancers or movers in general, all movers. The breath really serves us to move, not least for kind of supporting blood circulation, therefore oxygenation of different muscle groups, but as we were just talking about, it also shifts emotions and activates, as you know, lots of different really important systems in the body, not least the parasympathetic nervous system. And I found that there's a lot of conflicting information, whether you're ranging from the kind of scientific to the holistic. It's like, well, what is the correct way to breathe? What is that in the context of breathing at rest or breathing when dancing, or whether you're exerting yourself, because naturally the breath changes in response to how we move. And importantly, are there any specific movements kind of within dance that could actually support how we breathe and optimal breathing? So the film was made to try and demystify what we mean by optimal breathing. Obviously, the little play on DANCE is an acronym for trying to remember those principles of, let's say, breathing well. And I feel it's important to say that throughout our research, we actually found that, as no two people are the same, no two bodies are the same, no two breathing pattern is the same. So there is no one fixed rule for everybody. It can be really subjective and individualized, but there were commonalities with things that seemed to work for a lot of people. And the film, as I said, was about breathing kind of at rest. So if you are going to be moving exertion, don't be afraid to know that absolutely it's really difficult to keep breathing through the nose if we're really forcing yourself to move quite quickly or at speed or under pressure. What I found really interesting, which I'm about to invite discussion around, is kind of what is already in dance that serves us when we breathe. And Heather's already mentioned it, one of the components with flow, and I actually would love you to unmute and just invite any reflections on this, with no right or wrong, just thoughts or ideas. And now I'll let you know what we also found, and to say that this isn't evidenced greatly really in society at the moment, so it's still emerging. So there aren't really any wrong answers. We're gathering resources and information, but we're still kind of collecting that evidence pool. There's nothing necessarily out there that's this is how it is and nothing else applies. So what is already in dance that you may have just experienced or have an idea of that might serve us when we breathe?
I think Kate was... I suppose maybe like other exercises, the dance is enabling, encouraging you to breathe deeply, as you're making your movements. Breathing seems to synchronize with whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I think that word synchronicity is quite key. And I think that works on so many levels, whether you're synchronizing movement with breath, you're also synchronizing as a group to feel connected to one another. And then, these invisible levels of frequency, you can pick up the emotion or the physical kind of response of others as well. So if you are, let's say, having a difficult day with trying to become aligned or become synchronized, now actually if that's happening in a group, things can transfer, positive things can transfer that can help you become a little bit more embodied. And there was something else you said about enabling, and I think one thing I've found particularly connecting to flow is that how many of you, I know Tara said she was a little bit aware of her breath, or actually only afterwards found that she wasn't breathing in dance, and especially the imagery used in artist ideas can offer you a sense of absorption. So you're stuck in that flow, which is also flow theory is a kind of counterpart to wellbeing, where you are so focused on that body, on that present moment, you almost don't have space in your mind for thoughts outside of the dance space. Or did I put the washing on, or what happened for dinner? But also those that may have difficult breathing patterns and develop kind of anxiety or stress around that. If you think about it too much, it can be exacerbated. Whereas if your focus is redirected, or you're really on the flow, or you're really lost in the imagination from dance, it can be quite beneficial to help you find that synchronicity or that flow state as well. And things we're talking about here is also very connected to rhythm. And I use rhythm a lot in my practice, kind of either with the music. And I think there's also sort of research that talks about rhythmical movement actually supporting and enhancing the immune system. But obviously our breath has a rhythm in and of itself. And in terms of our research, I think it was in the film, the more steady that rhythm can be, particularly if we can slow it right down, the better. And in terms of specifics, kind of what movements might support us, we'll get to that in a minute, but I was finding that more mindful movements like Tai Chi actually enable us to bring in a bit more rhythmic movement with the physical dance expressive in itself, but with the breath, that synchronicity can be achieved if you start slower. Because if it's obviously too fast and you're getting carried away with that little bit of pretty one, obviously the breath and the body might be out of sync, which is no bad thing. But if you are trying to bring the two together, start a little bit slower, more mindful.
I think sometimes if you're having...
Yes, Karen, hi.
If you've got a bit of a tight chest and you know that your breathing isn't as good as it could be, you sort of tend to close down a bit more. Whereas it's, from what we've been doing today, it's so much more beneficial to sort of open up
start moving rather than think, oh gosh, I'm not having a good day, I'll sort of, you know, hibernate. You need to open out more because it makes you feel so much better.
Bingo, yeah. And actually what we found in our research and talking with quite a lot of respiratory physiotherapists, they were saying that so many, let's say, bad breathing problems or interferences occur when we've got poor posture or poor alignment. And that's why I'm actually to use the word adjust rather than posture, because I find sometimes posture feels a bit static, whereas actually you're making micro adjustments and changes all the time. And you should, depending on whether that's sitting, cooking, standing, talking, whatever, like the more the body can explore lots of different ways to be, the less you're going to build that tension, that tightness in one area. And so in that dance session, Karen, absolutely, like we tend, all of us, no matter who we are, we tend to hunch a little bit. Sometimes we tend to close in, especially when it's cold or we're really concentrating. So something, that's why I kind of went with rolling of the shoulders, but something is about opening out, but it can be as simple as your gaze. And there's a way of me saying, okay, we're going to extend through the chin, the neck to look upwards. Or I just say, have we got any cobwebs on the ceiling? And you automatically do it. Those conscious choice of words to open up. And similarly, just expanding out to your edges absolutely opens up across there and also across the back surface. Remembering that opening up is not just across the chest. When we go into that curve, we're really opening up between the shoulder blades, and that's just as beneficial. So it's, as I say, oscillating between these places. There's no one fixed position that suits all. It's finding micro adjustments somewhat continuously to help us with these. Great observation, Karen.
Emily, that was an amazing film. Very, very interesting. Very well explained. Do you, out of interest, do you have many men who are interested to do something like this? Because so many men need something like this, don't they? Because
yeah, I think the word dance is a little bit off-putting, even though it's 2021, unless you're in Latin America, as Western men still feel a little bit too self-conscious to join something dance related. So I mean, I have danced with mixed groups, but more often than not, I find that my sessions attract more women. Having said that, and that's on the participant side of it, but there's a wonderful researcher at Brunel who I was in discussion with about this project, and he's a dancer and a respiratory physiotherapist, and he so advocates for dance in this context and is wanting to actually build the research pool around it, subject to funding. So that's one male we've got as a champion who may attract other males, but I do find it's a little female dominated. Is there anything else you can think of in dance that might serve us naturally when we breathe? We covered kind of posture, flow, absorption. I think one thing that's perhaps obvious is just the fact that it's way more whole-bodied. Even if we're moving just with the fingertips, the sense of putting the body behind that movement tends to, and this is why dance is so effective in health context, we have an awareness of the whole body, even if we're moving in one part of the body and how everything's connected. And that's also communicated in the film, that although a lot of people think breath and lungs, actually it's an activity of the whole torso, and particularly things like the psoas muscle is connected in to our breathing muscles. So simple things like walking, which is absolutely whole body. We walk, we think it's initiated by the feet, but we often feel it's in the arms, the torso is involved, and importantly, the core and the abdomen. You can't really acknowledge in dance one part of the body without also activating and acknowledge the other parts of the body. And then specifically in terms of movements that we identified that might support us, those who may be challenged a little bit with breathing to open it up and free it up a bit, is what we did right at the beginning with expanding movements or extending movements particularly. And with extending movements, whether this is one where we extended just with the eyes, which extends through the front of the body, or whether you're comfortable to kind of take those arms up as well. And this was quite connected into the idea of the fascia, which we probably don't have loads of time to go into, but it's about opening in different sections of the body. Again, it can be slower, it can be mindful, it can be held or kind of slight shift in vibration, but extending movements that offer the fascia an opportunity to glide and open up that web-like structure. And we talked about expanding and talked about opening across the back surface. And again, something that may surprise you is that spinal mobility. Again, it's all interconnected. The diaphragm connects in to the spine and the lower ribs. So as soon as you can find, it's a little bit in the video and we did in the session, this sense of wave or anything that brings a little bit of movement into the spine is also really, really beneficial. If you want to combine like a spinal mobility and an extension, there's a sense of one foot in front of the other and this kind of wave that comes up. So you're getting extension across the front of the body, a little bit of cave kind of shifting in the spine, sending the pelvis out and going again. So there's lots of ways in dance that you can combine 2 or 3 things to be beneficial as one. And I think we're almost there. I've kind of talked about everything else, but as I say, it's emerging. The video's there as a resource. Further resources I'm sure will come in time. I know that singing for lung health is incredibly popular, and I encourage anyone, even if it's just that massage, again, coming back to the fascia, it's kind of starting from the outside and working our way in. The more we release on the edges, the more freedom we can then find at the center. And I'm talking too much, so is there any other questions or comments that anybody wants to share?
It's all really interesting and informative. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So we're all going to dance our way down the aisle in the supermarket now, are we? And get loads
Please
of
do.
space.
Create yourself a playlist that makes you want to move, whether that is more mindful, tai chi, soft and slow, but also those energizing dance playlists are equally beneficial. And whatever it is that brings a little movement to your day.
Thank you. It's really inspirational and encouraging. I'm going to spend the rest of the day moving like that.
Great. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.